Yo, boys, back with another video. Today we're going to be doing the good old-fashioned 2v2 arena uh, tier list guide, and if you guys want us to see a 3s and RPGs, let me know, but for right now we're going to go with 2s, and we're going to get on. It's been, I think, 4 weeks since we've done a tier list video, and to be honest, I only have DH gameplay. I don't even have Rogue gameplay. I haven't even been playing Rogue. Um, that's pretty much all there is to that. And we're gonna get on to the video here. I'm actually like trying to log off the game. There's nothing else to do. I'm kind of just bored out of my mind playing well. So let's finish up this video. So we're gonna start off with the good old fashioned. Let's go with Monk. So Monk Windwalker is obviously an S tier spec. Has a lot of damage. It's basically a sub rogue except you have consistent damage. What's not to like about Windwalker? Pretty much has everything now. I mean, you have plenty of. I mean, I would say your defenses aren't the greatest, but they're definitely like. I kind of underestimated the amount of CDs you have as a Windwalker because you have plenty. I mean, with the amount of bursts that you get in overall CDs, I mean, it's definitely an S tier spec. So we're gonna go with the next one. Mistweaver is another. You can either play Fistweaver or you can play a non-fist. Both are definitely insane. Usually, if they're playing with like a melee, they're playing Fistweaver, and they're literally just you know both hitting you the entire game to where even if you get CC, it doesn't matter, or even if you're attacking them both, he's just able to top them off. Really, it all depends on if you're playing in a class with like evasion, like blur. That way you can just blur offensively, and then he can't heal off you, forcing him to have to hit the healer or whoever else. But definitely an S tier spec. Now I'm not gonna be doing any of the tanks, obviously, because we ain't doing it. Next one's going to be Unholy DK. Unholy DK is going to be an A tier spec. I think it's just missing out on a little bit to be an S tier spec. And just because the other specs are just so good. And that's where we're going to put that. Arms Warrior. Arms Warriors is always an S tier spec in 2s. It's just, it is what it is. I mean, you have Sharpen. It's an automatic tank. Like, no matter what, in 2s wise, usually Arms Warrior, even if it doesn't even do much damage, it's always an S tier spec due to the fact that it can't die, and on top of that, it just has a lot of AoE damage. So overall, it's really good. I wouldn't say it's as good as a Windwalker or like a DH, like, but it's definitely up there. I'd say it's definitely an S tier. I mean, you put Resolute with a Warrior, and you're pretty much winning every. It's the best comp in the entire game. There's no better comp than Warrior, and it's been like that for like every season now. So we're gonna go with the next one. Fury Warrior is gonna be an easily B tier, maybe even a C tier. You still have somewhat of damage as Fury. I think the problem is like off your burst damage you have negative damage. It's like a Windwalker, except not anywhere near a Windwalker. It's like it's not terrible to where it's unplayable, but it's definitely not good. So it would need like either a buff on its overall damage or a buff on its burst to make it like a Windwalker, but or like an Unholy DK. But we'll put it there for now. Frost DK is another spec that is actually questionable. I'm gonna put it as B tier just because in 3s it's really good, in Solo Shuffle it's really good, but in 2 specifically, you have the burst damage. Now, consistent damage wise, it's pretty garbage, but it's supposed to be. It's a spec that's like it's like Sub Rogue, it's like Fire Mage, it's like Arcane Mage. Off your burst, you're not doing much. That's how Frost is, and that type of spec in 2s is usually not going to be good because 2s is all based around just damp and consistent damage, and that's about it. It's nothing really more than that. So there's that. We're gonna go with Mage, Frost Mage. Um, See, Mage is kind of a questionable, so I'm gonna put it as B tier just because overall it's good, but in 2s wise, you can't really play it with a rogue, and with a healer, it's not really that good. They're just gonna line your burst, and then they're just gonna wait it out, and then you're pretty much just gonna die. Like any class but rogue will easily beat a mage, and that's just how that goes. Now, obviously, if it's an arcane mage, is different because they have so much. They just unlimited. It's rough. Fire mage is obviously gonna be a B tier spec. You have the damage, now you just die immediately. It's like it's unbelievable how fast this spec dies. I give or take probably 2 goes max, and that's just not enough, especially with how many cooldowns people have to trade off now. It's like, you have the damage, but it's the only viable spec that you can play with a sub rogue, and if you don't win in the first opener or the second go, you're pretty much gonna lose automatically. So, yeah, not really trying to play that. Arcane Mage is definitely an S or an A tier spec, not an S tier. Um, if you're max gear and you have everything you need and you're playing like, let's say, a Rogue Mage is really good, and then Priest Mage is really good as well. I wouldn't say it's S tier, but it's definitely up there. It's definitely a really good spec to play. Obviously, you need full gear, you need tier set, and you need to know how to play it. But once you do, you're pretty much going to be winning games. Next spec here, we're going to go with Rogue. Outlaw Rogue is questionable. I'm honestly going to put it as an S tier spec. Now, just mainly due to the CC that you get and then the consistent damage on top of it, you'd never really see an Outlaw Rogue, like ever. And the reason is nobody plays this spec. Honestly, nobody plays any Rogue spec in general. You literally see either one Rogue in every like 10 matchups, or you see like some cringe double Rogue stuff. I actually faced a double Rogue today twice. It was annoying, and we went like 1-1 versus them on my DH, and we were doing DH Priest, which that was annoying. Sub Rogue, honestly, if you put a sub rogue with an arcane mage, it's really good. I would say the best comp that you can play is arcane mage or fire mage with the sub. I think priest rogue just cannot beat a warrior. And if you face any play, honestly, it's just you just don't do it. They're just too tanky. At that point, outlaw would just be 10 times better. Sub and anybody good is bad. Like if you're playing priest healer or priest rogue into any good player, you're most likely gonna lose. Unless you're both good players yourself. Like if you're doing perfectly good synced setups, then you're gonna have way more chance of winning. But if you just go in, you mess up one go every like 3 goes, you'll end up just getting absolutely farmed. Like pretty much I have zero chance doing gold carries past like 2K. Like unless the healer's actually good. And it has to be a priest because I need the extra dam. Unless I shadowy duel kill them or something, it's just not working. But overall, it's definitely not tier spec and twos. Assassination Rogue is definitely going to be a B tier spec. Um, Overall, it's not terrible, but again, it's just too damp. By the time you get to the point of dampen, you're literally gonna die. You have somewhat of damage. It's kind of like Windwalker, except you just have zero defenses. You have evasion, and then off that, you're pretty much dead. And then you have to usually vanish off to sap your blind because you don't get 2 vanishes. So overall, it's not terrible, but it's not good either. Because you just die so quickly, and the meta right now is just literally pure 24/7, 100% to 0% like a DR stun. So Assassination's definitely not going to be your go-to. It's still playable, but like once you start facing players that just use on your death mark and like counter it, you're literally gonna feel like you're doing nothing the entire game. I have literally never faced an assassination rogue over like 1800, maybe like 1900. And if I do, I absolutely farm them usually. So, they just don't. I don't really play assass, and I don't see any either. Next spec here, we're gonna go with Hound. We're gonna go with A tier for the Hunter. Serve does a lot of damage. You have the CC. You have pretty much everything you need as a serve right now. The only thing that they're missing, I'd say, is like you have to have some type of skill gap to play them. Like if you're not landing traps and you're not playing with like a druid or a priest, you're gonna have a hard time. But overall, it's definitely really good. BM Hunter is obviously an S tier spec. You do unhealable damage, literally unhealable damage. It still has yet to be nerfed, which is questionable, especially with how easy that spec is. Like the skill gap between BM Hunter and like DH isn't far. So there's that. We're gonna go with the next one here. MM Hunter is pretty bad to be honest. You have pretty good burst to be fair. Like your burst is definitely pretty crazy, but I think it's just in two specifically, it just dies way too quickly. And any real comp that's not playing like a double DPS is absolutely gonna farm, you know, MM Hunter. So there's that. I mean, obviously MM Hunter and Rogue can work, but like once you face to a certain rating, you're just gonna get absolutely smothered. I feel like. So we're gonna put that there. Now, I've seen a lot of Pharaoh Druids actually lately, and I'm gonna put it as an A tier spec. There is a bite build where you're hitting like 300k bites, and if you're playing decent at Feral, you know, you're literally gonna be, especially if you're playing with a priest, I can give you Dark Arc and PI. You're hitting like 315 bites non-stop on your burst. And trust me, that damage procs him real quick when you have a little bit of bleed dam on top of it. It's like a sub-rogue. You have Permacyclone, you have Precog, and then the only thing that these don't have is their healing. So like once their healer CC'd, they can sit in bear form, but they don't really do healing. So that's the only thing that they're missing. If they had healing, they'd be insanely good. Like if their Rejuve did like 40% of their HP, they'd be literally unkillable. So, you know, they get damage, but they took their healing away, which is fine. We're gonna go with Boomy here. Boomy is another spec that has damage, has somewhat of CC, pretty good CC, but overall, since it's a melee heavy meta in twos, they're just gonna train this guy down. He's gonna have to sit bear for him 90% of the game, and he's gonna die. The only viable really casters there are in twos is Evoker and like Destrolock and maybe like possibly Ellie, just because these don't really require much of a skill level to play, and they just do unhealable damage. So there's that. So now we're gonna go with Warlock. So Destro is definitely going to be an A tier spec. You have the damage, you have the CC. All that requires for this spec is to know how to play it and play with like a Wrestler or like a Priest that gives you PI or something. And one bullet literally will hit them for like 300k like minimum on your CDs. So if you know how to just channel your cast and bait kicks, you're just absolutely farming. But overall, it's definitely a good spec, but definitely not S tier. Affliction Warlock, I'm gonna put it B tier. Mainly the reason is you have insane damage as Affliction Warlock. So like I've seen people's videos where like in Solo Shuffle and stuff they put it at like S tier and stuff, or they put it at like C tier and D tier, but they're really good. They have insane amount of damage. I think the only problem with Affy Lock is they're a little bit too dampened. Like they need to like tune down the overall damage and give them burst damage. If that's what they're gonna, you can't have both. A class cannot be a PvE class and have unhealable burst damage and then unhealable overall damage, just like DH. So, so like imagine if Sub Rogue could kill you off blades in a stun, which it never can unless it's with like a mage that does the damage. But that's for example. That's like a BM hunter pretty much can kill you non-stop. So next back here we're gonna go with the let's see, Demo Lock. Demo Lock is cringe, but it's really good. You have unlimited peels. You have pretty much unlimited damage due to the fact that you don't actually have to. The only thing your job is to do is CC, summon pets, and let your pets do everything. And obviously, you can't CC every pet, so no matter what you're doing damage, it's definitely an A tier spec. Um, I faced a lot of these, and the only reason I put this at B tier spec is if you're playing like a DH. They're really good. They really are. Every time I face one on any setup comp that I've ever played, if they're good, then we don't have a chance. It's literally not even close. They have unlimited peeling. Even if you CC them, it doesn't matter. And then on their burst, they just do unhealable burst damage. They're really good. The only issue with this spec is the same thing as like Feral Druid. You have to know somewhat of what you're doing, otherwise you're just gonna get trained and you're going to die. So it's definitely better than these other specs, but it's definitely not S tier. So next one we're gonna go with Shaman. Uh, Enhancement is definitely questionable to be honest. I'd be hesitant to put it at B tier just because if you're playing like a proc based build, you'll literally one shot somebody. But if you're not playing proc based build, it's literally like a D spec. So let's just put it in the middle. I'd say if you're getting procs, it's definitely like a B or an A or B tier spec because you're literally just almost one shots non-stop on your burst. It's crazy broken. But at the same time, considering it doesn't do any consistent dam or have actual burst damage other than the proc, we're gonna put it as C tier for now. Ellie is a questionable spec to be honest. I'm gonna put it as B tier just because even though you get instacast, it's just not really. You need flame shocks. Like the whole thing is in solo shuffle and threes, you're just able to flame shock everything, get unlimited procs, and then literally just tear down an entire team with your one shots. The only reason this will be A tier is it's one shot. If you're running a one shot build, it literally will kill you in like a second. So You know, if you're running one shot build in twos, you can easily get 2100 up with it, but otherwise, I'd put it as B tier. I mean, it's good, but overall, a melee is just gonna train it down, and as long as you're just using buttons on their CDs, you're pretty much fine. Usually, unless they get like a lucky proc or something. So let's go with Shaman here. Resto Shaman is actually pretty solid if you know how to play it. It's definitely an A tier spec in twos. Maybe even B tier to be honest. I'd say maybe. I mean, the thing is like they're good, but it's just like S tier is just so strong. It feels like so it's like eh. I mean, obviously we know Resto is definitely an S tier spec. So we'll put it as A tier. We'll see if we'll switch that before the end of the videante, but we'll see what's goody. So let's put tank down here, tank down here, tank down here, tank, tank. Okay, next spec here, let's go with DH is definitely an S tier spec. Again, you guys have seen me play it. It's pretty insane, especially if you play it well. The only reason this wouldn't be good in twos is the only thing this has a hard time countering up against is Rogue. Like, it's probably worse than DH, like, defensively. I think it has the worst CDs I've ever seen. You can die 100-0 through your blur and through darkness. Well, maybe not 100-0, but to the point to where it's like, oh, wait, there's a chance he can kill me. Um, and only having those two CDs that are on a pretty hefty CD, like Darkness is, I think, is like a 4 or 5 minute CD, or it's a long CD. I think it's like 3 to 5 minutes, and it's not even 100%. So even if you use it, it's not even like a defensive cooldown if they're doing a lot of damage. It's just like a, oh well, it's basically like a wall pretty much when it should be an 100%, evade. And then obviously you have Blur if you're running the talent, but the only reason this wouldn't be that good defensively wise is it has a hard time versus rogues. But thankfully you don't see much rogues, and if you do, if you just play pretty solidly, all they're gonna the only win rate for a rogue usually, unless playing rogue mage, is Shadow Idol one shot. Unless they're good and they're just from the bat playing with like a Resident. If they're doing Resident Rogue, it's different. Because then they just do sync CC, and since it's a Resident, by the time you even catch the guy, he's just spam rooting you, spam cycloning you, and then the go's already get, up to go. So the only reason this would be, you know, it's definitely an S tier spec. Let's just get on with it. So I'm gonna put this as honestly, like this is probably the worst spec in twos. All get like so we're not even gonna talk about this. This is probably the worst spec in twos arena, as bad as tanks. So next one here, SP. We're gonna put as B tier. You have pretty much everything, but I think again, casters, the reason they have a hard time is their amount of burst damage, and then on top of that, the pillars. People have a hard time with pillars because a lot of people will just sit on the pillar, wait till they, till their burst is done, and then go back out. And the problem with a lot of these casters is they made these guys so heavy reliant on their burst that off their burst they're not doing much damage. When it should be, oh, I should be doing a lot of consistent damage, and then on my burst I get a little bit extra. It shouldn't be, oh, well, I don't have burst, so I can't do anything. And they made every PvE caster like that, or it's like that's just how it is. The only casters that should be like that is Fire Mage and Hunter, and maybe Destrolog. These three should be the only burst specs in the entire game. Everything else should be a consistent damage. It should still have a little bit of burst ammo, obviously, but it should not have like enough to 100 OU or nothing. You should have it should be basically an Affy lock, pretty much, except without the amount of like one-shot damage that it has. But now we're gonna go with Holy Priest. Holy Priest is honestly just like it's good, but it's not good. So I'm gonna put it as B tier. I think it's the one healer that's at B tier. I think overall, it's not like if it had more. It need the one thing it needs damage reduction. It doesn't have damage reduction, making it irrelevant. So no matter how much healing the spec would have, it has no damage reduction. It's literally the only healer in the entire game without an ability to make you stop taking damage or like take you from to stop you from taking as much damage as you are. You don't have a wall for your teammate like Ironbark, Sack, Earthen Wall, stuff like that. Evoker is definitely going to be a tier spec. It's actually pretty. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. So it's definitely not an S tier spec, but it's not an B tier spec. H-Pal, definitely again an A tier spec. Not the best, not the worst. If you're geared and you have foresight, it's definitely good. Like, it's not terrible. It's not as good as the Mistweaver or Wrestler. These are just by the top dogs. Honestly, I'd even put Disc at the top dog thing too. If you know how to play Disc Priest, and if you're playing a Disc Priest, there's only one meta that you can play now that will work. If you literally play like a Wrestler or a Mistweaver, sit behind a pillar, play with something that doesn't require you to play the game, and then use the mana talent versus every, if you're having a hard time on mana, just run the mana talent to where it's like, oh, well, I'm not running out of mana now, we're equal with mana. And then you're just radiancing into your penance, into a shield, and that's all you're doing the entire game. And you'll literally live to like 70% damp every single game. So it's just up to your DPS that you choose to kill the person. So it's definitely an S tier spec overall, but it is a boring spec to play. At that point, you might as well just play a Mistweaver or a Rusted. But you know what it is. Evoker DPS is questionable. Overall, I'd probably put it as a B tier spec. It has the burst damage. If you don't play good versus this, you literally will get one-shotted. But if you do play good against it, it's not really that good. Like, if you just use cooldowns on their CDs, again, it's a caster and 2, so it's not going to be the very best. And then we have Ret, which is going to be an A tier spec. Ret is just really good overall. You have Sank, you have a bunch of utility, and you have a decent amount of burst. Now, obviously, uh, it doesn't even have as much burst as it needs. I think for a Ret Paladin, on your wings, you need to be able to 100-0 somebody in between your Hajj. So in between your 5 second, basically a 5 second kidney. If your class doesn't like, if you're based off your burst, like imagine if Sub Rogue didn't kill you in a kidney shot or 3 cheap shots without using a single cooldown, it wouldn't be viable. Because these classes are based on same thing with Windwalker, same thing with MM, same thing with Fire Mage. These classes are based off. Oh, well, I click my CDs. If you don't have CDs, you die. Same thing with Pharaoh Druid. So a lot of these classes, a lot of people don't understand. If you just click CDs on their burst, you will literally be fine. And a lot of people just don't understand that. And a lot of people get fumed when they face like any Windwalker or any Rogue or anything that's burst wise because they're like, bro, he's clicking burst, he's doing unhealable damage. But if you guys see my last video, you saw them sub rogues, they didn't really stand a chance. Because if I just use CDs on his buzz or on his burst, they don't really stand a chance against me. Now, there is a counter that if you play with like a mage, or if you play with if you're good, then it's different. Because then you're just popping CD off CD, and then it's first one, whoever's the better player, whoever can dampen higher, whoever has the better healer. So let's say it's a Wrestler versus a Disc, a Wrestler will always win. A Wrestler will always beat every other spec in the game automatically. Like, they should have a 9-1 advantage, because the Wrestler they're too strong. A Wrestler can out heal every single healer in the game, even a Mistweaver. Like, they can heal to probably 80% before they have, like, at the point where they can't heal. Every other healer is probably around 65 to 70 max. So they're getting that extra 10%, which is like an extra minute and a half of you not being able to heal. So you're forced to use all your defensives. Meanwhile, they're just literally spam healing their teammate. But let me know what you guys think about this. Obviously, I tried to make this a little bit of a better guide. But this is pretty much, I think, honestly, since I played so many twos, I've kind of gotten the groove of things. So let me know what you guys think. The worst thing that I could say is, like, Assassination Road could be up here. Just because of the Shiv. But honestly, I just don't think it. I think it would need more damage. Like, I think it's so dampened where it's like, anything else would just be better. So, obviously, the only thing I could switch in this is probably, like, an Assassination Rogue being A tier. But let me know what you guys think. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for the algorithm. Otherwise, go check out my other videos. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, what you want to see next. Obviously, I know you guys are interested for the cooldown video. I'll have to figure out how to do that. If I want to just have somebody test subject as a duel and then explain the CDs, maybe like get every class and just explain. I don't know yet. We'll have to figure out something though. I don't want to make a long video, but you guys, somebody give me a suggestion on what I should do for that. Maybe like do a war game with every class, put it into a video, and that's how we do it. I don't know yet. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you join the community on the Discord, and if you would like to buy carries or coaching, hit me up on the Discord and PM me and I'll get to you. But otherwise, enjoy the video.